My mom claimed she was too broke for my daughter's birthday but spoiled my niece, so I stayed silent. And let the truth destroy her image. Mom texted, "We're skipping your kid's birthday." "Things are tight," I said, "no problem." A week later at Christmas, I saw their post. Rich gifts, balloons, all for my sister's kids. My girl whispered, "They forgot me again, didn't they?" I just quietly did this. By 9 a.m., Dad was banging on my door, red-faced, screaming. I wasn't expecting much. Just a simple party with cake, maybe a little pizza. My daughter, Emma, was turning 7. And like every year, I planned something small but sweet. She's never been the kind of kid to ask for much. She just wanted her grandparents there. My parents. Her eyes lit up when she talked about them. Always hoping they'd show up the way they did for my sister's kids. Decked out with balloons, loud laughter, and arms full of gifts. But 4 days before her birthday, I got the text, "We're skipping Emma's party. Things are tight this month. Love you." No call, no apology, just that. I stared at the screen for a long time before I replied with a simple, "No problem." I didn't want to make a scene. I figured maybe they really were struggling. The economy's been hard on everyone, but something about the way they worded it, like skipping her birthday was just crossing off an item on a grocery list, ate at me. Emma didn't cry when I told her they wouldn't be coming. She just looked at the ground and said, "Maybe they'll come next year." I smiled and nodded, but I already knew they wouldn't. Her birthday came and went. We had a great time, just the two of us. I even invited a couple of her school friends and we did a little unicorn-themed picnic in the park. She was happy, or at least she pretended to be. And then a week later, Christmas Eve rolled in. We didn't get an invitation, no phone call, no message, nothing. Emma waited by the window that morning in her red pajamas, clutching the drawing she made for Grandpa and Grandma. She even drew their house with hearts above it. Around noon, I gently told her we probably wouldn't be going this year. She just sat down very quietly, then she whispered it. "They forgot me again, didn't they?" That was it. No tears. Just that one sentence. My stomach twisted. I opened Facebook later that day. Shouldn't have, but I did. And there were photos from my parents' house. Huge Christmas tree, mountain of presents, my sister's boys tearing into gifts with wild smiles. Streamers, balloon arches, a hired Santa. My mom even commented, "So blessed to be with our favorite little ones this year." Favorite. Something cracked inside me that night. I stayed up thinking about every time I'd paid their utilities when they said they were short. Every time I helped them fix their car. Every time I gave them money for emergencies that never seemed to affect anyone but me. I didn't say a word, just quietly packed up the Christmas decorations and went to bed. But by 9 a.m. the next morning, Dad was banging on my door, red-faced, yelling loud enough to wake the whole building. I opened it slowly. He shoved his phone in my face. "You really think it's okay to embarrass us like that? Your little post. What the hell is wrong with you?" I hadn't posted anything, not a word, but someone had and it had gone viral in the family group chat. My sister had screenshotted the balloon photo and wrote under it, "This is what skipping Emma's birthday and Christmas looks like. Hope you're proud." That was the start. And things only got messier from there. Dad stormed into my apartment like he owned it, still waving his phone like it was a weapon. I shut the door behind him calmly. Emma was still asleep, or at least pretending to be. She was good at that lately. I didn't say a word as he went off about how ungrateful I was, how much they'd done for me, how I'd twisted the story to make them look bad. I let him run out of steam. Then I asked one question. "What did Emma get from you this year?" He stared at me, blinked, then said something about hard times, and you know how it is. I nodded and walked to the kitchen, made coffee, gave him none. That was the last time he set foot in my home. After he left, furious, I sat on the couch and texted my sister. "Thank you," she replied right away. "I've had enough of their crap, too." That made 2 of us. It didn't take long for the rest of the family to pile on. My Aunt Cheryl sent me a novel-length message about how disappointed she was in me for causing division. My cousin Brittany chimed in, too, calling me dramatic and selfish, said I was ruining Christmas with my attitude. I just blocked them both. Mom didn't say anything directly, not a word, but she liked one of Brittany's posts that said, "Some people love playing victim when they're just bitter. They're not the favorite." That hurt more than I expected. I was still paying their phone plan, their car insurance, half their rent. I hadn't told anyone, not even my sister, but I had picked up a second remote job this year just to make ends meet after Emma's dad stopped paying child support. And I still made sure my parents didn't go without. So, I started small. I removed my name from their utility account. They noticed that within a week. Mom texted asking if there was a mistake. I told her there wasn't. Then I paused their phone plan. That one got a call, or it would have if I hadn't already blocked the number. My sister called me that night. She said, "You know they're freaking out. Dad's blaming me now." I told her I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I was just done. I still remember what she said next. "You don't owe them anything. They made their choices." It was the first time someone said that to me. Things were quiet after that. No texts, no fake apologies, just silence. I focused on work, kept my head down. Emma and I started doing little projects together. She got into painting and I let her turn the hallway into her own art gallery. I couldn't give her cousins or grandparents who treated her right, but I could give her color, attention, peace. Then in early March, something unexpected happened. I got an email from a company I'd applied to 9 months ago and forgotten about. They wanted to interview me for a remote creative lead role. Almost triple what I was making now. Fully flexible benefits, bonus structure. I thought it was a scam at first, but it wasn't. 2 weeks later, I had the job. That same day, I bought Emma a bike she'd circled in a catalog 2 years ago, and we spent the whole afternoon riding through the neighborhood. I watched her smile stretch wider than I'd seen it in a long time. And that night, I opened my emails again. 2 new ones, one from my dad, one from Aunt Cheryl. Both said the same thing in different words. They heard I got a promotion, and they wanted to talk. Of course they did. By April, I was earning more than I ever had in my life. Not just surviving, thriving. The job was demanding, but I loved it. It was like someone had finally opened a window in a room I didn't realize I'd been suffocating in. I had options now. Freedom. For the first time, I didn't have to check my bank app every time I filled up the tank or picked up groceries. I started spoiling Emma. Nothing over the top, just enough to watch her glow. Swimming lessons, weekend art classes, the rollerblades she'd been eyeing at Target for a year. She was happier. I was happier. That's when they all started crawling back. Mom texted out of nowhere. "Emma would love the fair this weekend. Maybe we could all go together." I stared at that message for a while. Emma hadn't received a birthday gift or a Christmas card or a single call. And now suddenly there was interest. I didn't respond. 2 days later, Dad sent a voice message. I didn't listen to it, just deleted it. The kicker came from my cousin Brittany of all people. After publicly dragging me a few months ago, she messaged me on Instagram like we were old friends. Said she was so proud of me and wanted to know how I made the leap. Asked if I could look at her resume. Said her job was soul-crushing and she needed an upgrade. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd said to me or about Emma. I left her on read. Then came Mother's Day. My sister invited us to brunch at her place. Just her and the kids. No drama. Emma was excited to see her cousins, so I said yes. Halfway through pancakes, my sister asked if I'd talk to Mom. I just shook my head. She sighed. Said, "They're trying, you know." And I said, "Too late." That same week, Emma got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. I knew the handwriting instantly. My mom's cursive always slanted too far right. Inside was a card with glitter flowers and a note. "We've missed you, sweet girl. Hope to see you soon. Love, Grandma, and Grandpa." Tucked behind it, a $10 bill. Emma looked at it and asked if she could spend it on art supplies. I said, "Sure." I didn't mention it, but something in me twisted when I saw that bill. Not because of the money, but because they really thought they could buy their way back in with $10 after 2 years of absence and disappointment. Over the next month, the messages picked up. Dad emailed me a list of repairs they needed for their house. Said they'd always appreciated my help and hoped I could come through one last time. One last time, like this was a war, and I was their last soldier. I never replied. I was done financing people who would have let my daughter go through every birthday alone if it weren't for my sister. Then came Emma's school art show. Her teacher had called a week before and said Emma's work had been chosen for a special display. She was one of 3 students to be highlighted. I posted a few photos on Facebook. Nothing flashy, just her grinning next to her painting, which was this wild mix of gold and navy swirls. I captioned it, "So proud of my brilliant little artist." Within minutes, the likes rolled in, and then came the comments. Aunt Cheryl wrote, "Beautiful. You've raised such a sweet girl." Brittany commented, "Aw, she's growing up so fast. You're such a great mom. We've always known she was gifted. Hope we get to see her soon. Love you both." I didn't delete it. I didn't even hide it. I just replied, "She needed you at 7. She's 8 now. Try saying that to her face." Thought quiet after that. But the real storm was just starting because by summer, I made a decision. I was going to cut them off for good. Not just emotionally, financially. Every last tie. In July, I sat at my kitchen table with a spreadsheet open and a cup of coffee I'd reheated twice. I went line by line: car insurance, cell plans, the emergency credit card I'd added mom to years ago. It was like untangling vines that had wrapped around my bank account for most of my adult life. By noon, I'd shut it all down. I canceled every payment, every automatic transfer, every shared account. I sent no warnings, just receipts. I screenshotted the cancellations and forwarded them to my mom with 2 words: all done. No reply. For a while, it was blissfully silent. I didn't hear from anyone for almost 3 weeks. Then out of nowhere, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. Is this Amanda? Yeah. Who's this? This is Jason. I work at AAA Auto. Your parents are here trying to get a tow, but their membership's inactive. They said you usually handle it. I almost laughed. They'll have to figure it out, I said and hung up. The next day, my mom finally cracked. She emailed me a long rambling message about how embarrassing it was to be stranded on the side of the road. How they didn't know the membership was under my name. How a heads up would have been nice. I stared at the blinking cursor for a while before I typed back: Emma spent Christmas alone. I think we're even. Then I hit send. But I wasn't ready for what happened next. One night in late August, Emma and I were watching a movie on the couch. She was curled up in a blanket, halfway asleep. I got up to get her some water, and that's when I saw the headlights sweep across our front window, then the doorbell. I looked through the peephole and froze. It was my parents, and they weren't alone. Behind them stood Aunt Cheryl and Brittany. All 3 of them dressed up like they were going to dinner, standing on my doorstep like they just dropped by for tea. I opened the door just enough to step out. Before I could speak, Aunt Cheryl started in. Said they were worried. Said they didn't recognize me anymore. That I used to be so kind, so family-oriented. Brittany smirked. She's rich now. Rich people don't need family. Mom stayed quiet. Just stood there with her purse clutched like it was a shield. I told them to leave. Cheryl scoffed. Really? After everything we've done? I stared at her. You mean like ditching my kid on her birthday or calling me dramatic for expecting basic decency? That's when Brittany snapped. You're being cruel. Your parents are old. They're struggling. And they're not my responsibility. I started to close the door and Cheryl lunged forward and grabbed it. You'll regret this. You'll end up bitter and alone just like your father said. And then Emma's voice behind me. I'm not alone. I have my mom. They all went silent. I turned around slowly, and there stood Emma in the hallway, clutching her worn stuffed unicorn tightly against her chest, her small face serious as she stared straight at the group on the doorstep. My mother attempted a tentative smile, her voice softening as she said, "Hi, sweetheart." But Emma didn't respond with her usual warmth. Instead, she took a quiet step backward into the safety of our home. Without uttering a single word, I firmly closed the door on them, the click of the lock echoing in the sudden silence. About a week passed before my phone rang with my sister's name on the screen. When I answered, I could hear her crying softly on the other end. She explained, voice trembling, that our parents had been busy spreading their version of events to anyone who would listen, telling uncles, aunts, cousins, and distant relatives that I had cruelly abandoned them in their time of need. They claimed I'd cut off their phones, leaving them stranded without basic necessities like food or reliable transportation, and worst of all, that I was deliberately poisoning Emma's young mind against her own grandparents. It wasn't long before the messages started pouring in. Like vultures sensing weakness, extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly emerged from the woodwork. Uncles sent long lectures about family loyalty. Cousins fired off accusations of selfishness and ingratitude. One particularly distant relative even implied that I should feel eternally grateful simply for having been raised at all, as if that obligation erased everything else. The guilt trips were relentless, layered with disappointment and veiled threats of permanent rifts. I read them, felt the familiar sting, but refused to engage. Yet none of that prepared me for the real shock, which arrived about a month later. It started innocently enough, or as innocently as debt collection calls ever are. I was in the middle of a work meeting when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. And again. By the 3rd attempt, a voicemail waited, a professional, polite woman named Michelle from Stone Brook Financial Recovery, informing me they were contacting me regarding an outstanding loan under the name Amanda R. Johnson. My heart skipped. I hadn't taken out any loan. As soon as the meeting ended, I called back, hands shaking slightly. Michelle patiently confirmed the details: $8,000, disbursed 6 months earlier. My full name, my social security number, everything matched except the address and contact phone, which traced directly to my parents' house and my father's cell. She kindly emailed the application documents. I opened them on my laptop, scrolling with a growing sense of dread until I reached the signature page. It wasn't mine. The loops and slants were off, a clumsy forgery in cheap ballpoint ink that screamed betrayal more loudly than any argument ever could. My own father had committed identity theft against me. I didn't break down. No screaming, no tears, just a cold, resolute calm settling over me. The next morning, I printed every page, drove to the local police station, and filed an official report. When asked if I wished to press charges, I didn't hesitate. Yes. Absolutely yes. I'd spent far too many years playing the role of family ATM, emergency fixer, and emotional punching bag. Enough was truly enough. Predictably, the backlash exploded immediately. My phone lit up with calls and texts from uncles I barely remembered and cousins who'd stayed silent during every slight against Emma. They all sang variations of the same song. I was tearing the family apart, sending an elderly man to jail over a simple mistake, destroying everything for petty revenge. My sister called amid the chaos, her tone more resigned than surprised. She confessed that Dad had attempted the exact same scheme with her years ago, asking for her information under some flimsy pretense. She'd refused outright. I never even had the opportunity to say no. Then, a few days later, a handwritten letter arrived from Dad. One stark page. No remorse, no plea for understanding. Just a blunt declaration: you didn't need the money. We did. We're family. Those words, scrawled in his familiar handwriting, marked the true end of any lingering doubt. Family didn't do this. Not to each other. That was the final communication I ever received from him. A single page with no remorse, no acknowledgement of the pain he'd caused, just a cold justification: we needed the money more than you, and after all, we're family. Reading those words felt like the last thread snapping. The very next day, I updated my email signature. I removed his last name entirely and adopted a variation inspired by Emma's, something fresh, untainted. It felt liberating, like shedding an old skin that had been weighing me down for years. Clean. Right. A few weeks later, completely out of the blue, an envelope showed up in my mailbox. It was from Brittany, of course, glittery and over the top, with that fake calligraphy handwriting people pay for these days. Inside was the wedding invitation, all elegant fonts and embossed flowers. Tucked in was a handwritten note: family will be seated together. Hope there's no tension. Followed by 2 little drawn hearts. I stared at it for a moment, then burst out laughing, sharp, incredulous laughter that echoed in the quiet kitchen. In that instant, everything crystallized. I was truly finished pretending these people were still my family in any meaningful way. I didn't bother with an RSVP. No text, no phone call, no polite decline. I simply tossed the invitation straight into the trash and moved on with my day. I recognized it immediately for what it was: bait. A calculated attempt to reel me back into the drama, to force some kind of public reconciliation or, worse, to paint me as the villain if I didn't show up smiling. On the day of Brittany's wedding, Emma and I chose something far better. We drove out to a quiet hiking trail just outside town, one we'd been meaning to explore for months. The air was crisp, the path lined with evergreens, and the only sounds were our footsteps and birds overhead. Emma had packed the snacks herself, little sandwiches cut into hearts, fruit, and her favorite cookies. As we walked, she chattered excitedly about a story she was writing in her notebook: a brave girl and her devoted mom teaming up to battle all sorts of monsters, facing dangers side by side and always coming out stronger. She described the scenes with such animation, her eyes sparkling. I listened quietly, smiling, because I understood exactly what those monsters represented. We didn't need to say it out loud. That evening, as we settled in back home, my phone rang. It was my sister, her voice soft and tired. She told me my name had come up multiple times at the reception, Dad holding court, apparently, spinning the narrative that I'd poisoned Emma's mind against them, that I'd always been the overly dramatic one in the family. People nodded along, she said, some even adding their own comments. I felt a brief flicker of anger, but it passed quickly. I didn't defend myself, didn't explain. There was no point anymore. The following morning, after a peaceful breakfast with Emma, I opened the family group chat one last time. I typed a clear, calm message: we're done. Please don't contact me or Emma again. Wishing you peace, but we won't be part of this family anymore. I hit send and watched the responses flood in. Most were furious: accusations, exclamations, demands that I reconsider. Others tried guilt, reminders of blood ties, shared history, how family forgives. One cousin went on about disrespecting our heritage, as if blood excused everything. But then came a private text from my sister: I understand. Love you always. Simple, steady, sincere. That was everything I needed. Her support anchored me more than any forced reconciliation ever could. As winter arrived, Emma and I slipped into a beautiful new rhythm of our own. Life felt lighter, intentional. I surprised her with a trip to the ocean, her very first time seeing it. We spent the day building sandcastles, collecting shells, and watching waves crash under a gray sky. Back home, we created our own traditions for the holidays, baking cookies shaped like unicorns, stringing lights in her room, making gifts for each other. Everything simple, heartfelt, peaceful, no obligations, no hidden resentments. One quiet evening, as we decorated our little tree, Emma carefully hung a new ornament she'd picked out herself, a shimmering gold unicorn, delicate and magical. She stepped back to admire it, then turned to me with a curious tilt of her head and asked, "Why,